everyone. All right, good day, everyone. This is Olivia speaking. Welcome to PMP in 1 week. PMP in 1 week. So for the first session, I'm here. There's someone else in the class, in the physical class. We have about two students who are supposed to be here. Actually three who are supposed to be in the physical class. But so far you just see my face and those who are online. So what we ask usually the first class to do is for you to turn on your mic, or if you want your camera, just so we can introduce each other, introduce yourself, um, in what field you are, so that we can customize the teaching in relation with your field. All right, project management, in relationship with your field. So feel free to open your mic and then you introduce yourself, and and why PMP. All right, what sector you're in and why PMP. All right, I think Igor or Velvita, who was here very early on, she can go ahead and introduce yourself. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah,
All
I
right,
can hear you.
good. Okay, Igor, can you just introduce yourself while Velvita is getting ready?
Okay, so so my name is Igor Njima, Ngima. So I'm project director for Freedom House in Burkina Faso. I'm
Okay.
based in Ouagadougou. I actually got here yesterday.
Mm.
So for those of you who know what Freedom House is, it's a human rights organization, and the project I'm working on is an access to justice and advocacy and documentation of human rights towards civil society organizations. So basically, my work is to um, basically do a lot of capacity building for local NGOs in order to properly um, document and advocate for human rights obligation towards state authorities, but also non-state actors, because Burkina Faso is a war-torn country, so there are armed conflicts in some parts of the country. So
Mm.
it is also part of what they are supposed to do, and there are certain risks that are attached to such activities. So there is the substantial part that is to build their capacity on how to do it technically. So how to properly document, how to advocate, what are the steps that they need to to complete in order to do that properly. And then there is the everything that is around it, like risk assessment, when to document, what to document, how to publish it, if you have to publish it or not, what are the preliminary steps that you need to satisfy before you do that. So,
Okay.
and YPMP, it's a project. So,
Mm-hmm.
I have financial constraints, but also I have objectives that I need to attain,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. So it's a project, and
Mm-hmm.
as I explained when I applied, I've never really done a project from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be the first time that I'll do it, and I was actually very lucky to see that offer, and I jumped on it. So that's it.
Great, great, awesome, awesome. Uh, Thank you, Igor. Velvita, are you back? Velvita, are you on? All right, when she'll be back, she will introduce herself. Um, and we're waiting for Christelle, we're waiting for Luciola, and Isabel will also join us at one point during the class, because she started this class already. So let's jump right in. We have a lot to cover today. So we're going to jump right in. And then there's Silvana who is here with me, and probably Luciola who will be coming. But in order to tackle all the things we need to tackle today, we have to get started right now. All right. So thank you all, and welcome. Welcome again to Project Management in 1 week class. And I'm going to, for the first class, I'll turn on I'll keep my video on for a good amount of time, just so I can, explain some of the key aspects. And then afterwards, I'll turn off my video. Okay, so there are three things you need to keep in mind, for this class. It's true that there are two kinds of people who take the class. There are those who, the majority of students we have come for the class to class to gain newer skills, new knowledge, and master the ability. And that's great. And a lot, I would say 80-90% of our students actually don't go all the way to the PMP certification, the American certification, right, by the Project Management Institute. And then the 10% who go all the way to getting certified globally, they have to go the extra mile, because there's a lot of content, there's a lot of material. So this first class is a class number 0, which basically establishes the foundations, the new perspective you have to look at projects from, and the things you have to take into consideration, right, as you're tackling a new project. All right. So the other students are late, but they'll join us in the middle of it. All right. So there are three things. All right. Whether you're going all the way to the certification or not, there are three things that you really need to understand with this class and with this new area of knowledge, we can call it that way, of you know of knowledge with project management. The first one is this class. What you will learn in this class. 30% of what you learn in this class is project management knowledge, right? What is knowledge? Knowledge is are the 10 knowledge areas, right? So the integration management, scope management, resource management, risk management, stakeholders management, communication management, and all the other knowledge areas. So you will gain knowledge, definitely. So your knowledge will grow. Fantastics. You will get the skills to do what? To actually the technical skills. So PMP is divided in three kind of skills: people skills, business or project management skills, and knowing your business environment. And so it will always come back to those three. All right, those three skills in every knowledge area we'll be covering. You will learn those three kind of skills. And the third one, which is really essentially in your hands, is ability. All right, so combining knowledge with skills and ability is what gives a competence, right? Because a competence are those three combined: knowledge, skills, and ability. And the ability, you gain the ability how? By practicing. All right, practicing the knowledge and the skills you would have learned, because it's a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills you will receive, but if you don't apply it, if you don't put it in practice, you will not gain the ability. You'll have a lot of knowledge and skills, but you will not get the ability to do it. And for it to be a competence, for people to recruit you as a project manager, it's true that many of us, we did a lot of project management before even learning how to do it methodically, which is what this class will teach. But they need you to have the competence. That means you can apply the knowledge and the skills you've learned in real life scenarios and real life examples. All right, so that's what this class will be teaching you: the knowledge, the skills. And I want you to understand that the ability really is in your hands. And what this class will help you do to develop the ability is give you quizzes that will help you to practice, to learn, to test your knowledge, to see what is the most important actually out of what we'll be teaching you in the classes. All right. So I want us to start with that as the foundation. All right. Isabel joined us. Yes. Hello. All right. So the curriculum, as explained in the email, we have 5 days. So today we'll cover class number 0, project management framework and integration management. Right. Tomorrow we'll cover stakeholders management, communication management, and we will try to do scope management tomorrow. Then on day 3, we will cover schedule management and cost management. We'll start the technical skills, as they call it. The technical skills start out, I'll show you. So stakeholder management, integration management is a little technical, not too much. Stakeholder management and communication management, these are soft skills. All right. So people skills. Scope management starts becoming a very technical skill, but not very, a technical skill, um, and is one of the first baselines. Then we have schedule management, which is also the second baseline. And then we have cost management, which is the third baseline of a project. And it gets very, very technical by day 3. So these two are heavy, they're heavy, especially on the exam, on the certification. Then on day 4, we'll go back on the, relatively soft skills, resource management, managing your team, managing resources in your project. Then quality management, making sure that you have an eye on the quality and that the quality comes through. And day 5, the last day on Saturday, we'll do risk management, which is one of my favorite topics. Anticipating risk, planning risk, and planning how to respond when triggers of risk come up. And then procurement management, which speaks about contracts, about third parties, about uh, outsourcing, vendors, and all that. And then project management ethics and professional rule of conduct. All right. So that's the overview of our class. That's the overview of our class. And so, what are the steps to become a PMP, a project management professional? Number one, you sign up for the class, right? This is where you are. Then number 2, you start the class and the application when you're ready, right? The application for the next step, the certification. Then you submit the application on the Project Management Institute website, and you show that you did actually 35 hours of project management education. So these are class qualifies for the 35 hours of PMP education, because it's been since January 2018. We've been doing this, and the students who have gone all the way to the certification have used our classes to be eligible to sit down for the exam. And then you wait about 5 to 7 days for the Project Management Institute to approve your application or not. And then when it's approved, you can take and pass your exam from the comfort of your home. Now that COVID-19 changed everything, and now as long as you have a stable internet, you don't need to travel to anywhere else to a center. You just take the PMP from the comfort of your home, a 4-hour exam. All right. So, about the exam, for those who will take the certification, this is just a quick overview, but I'll go through this very quickly because I like working on this with zooming in on this for those who actually, when they're ready to apply for the exam. So, in general, all you have to know is what you have to know is that as a scenario based kind of question exam, 200 scenarios in multiple choices. Essentially, what the exam test is your competence. I repeat it because I want you to remember that it's not a knowledge test, it's not a skills test, it's not even an ability test. It is a competence test. That means what? 200 questions in 4 hours. You have about a 1 minute, 1 minute 25 seconds, all right, per question to answer. So what does that mean? It means that this is not at that time that you start thinking, what should be this, what should be that. They put you in an atmosphere and an environment, a test environment where You really have to have developed already the mindset of a project manager. And when you're in front of a case scenario, you can answer the question in 30 seconds. All right. 30 seconds, 1 minute. You can answer it right there. Why? Because before the exam, you would have prepared ahead of time with practices, with getting the knowledge, with getting the skills, with applying all that and getting the ability, so that by the time you sit down for the exam, you have the competence. All right. So it's a competence exam for those. So it's a competence certification. So 4 hours, you have to pace yourself. There's no mark of your, it's not quantitative data. It's either pass or fail, either you're on target or off target. um, they don't publish the passing score anymore, and it requires 35 hours of project management education, which is this class that you're taking, and requires experience. Because they need you to have done some project management, right? That's why this class is so much more beneficial for people who have worked on projects in the past, like Igor, his project right now, or projects he has done in the past, so that you start connecting the dots and you start understanding. Kind of like Isabel, we started a session last week, and she was saying, oh, now I understand why we were doing this, and why this was coming before that, and why we had to consult with this person. Because the class will help you now make sense of a lot of the experience you've been doing. But since you were not doing it, you were not seeing it from the glasses, from the framework of a project manager, it was just, business as usual, without you understanding why are we doing this at this time and for what. And some experience also they'll require is that you have at least a high school diploma or an associate degree or equivalent, and a bachelor's degree or a global equivalent. Or if you don't have it, you must back it up with the amount of hours of work that you've done already. So the PMP does not test the certification, does test. What it does test is your knowledge of all the things we'll be tackling during the class today, tomorrow, during the week. So the 5 process groups, all right. So initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. The 10 knowledge areas of PMP, the 49 Project Management Institute processes, and then input tools and techniques and outputs. You will not have to memorize all that. I'll tell you what you will have to memorize, but there are many things you don't have to memorize. All right. Just understand the spirit behind it, the why, and it will help you to understand different processes. So it will also have your ability to apply key formulas to scheduling, to costing, to estimating, and your ability to apply the 49 processes in variety of situations. So essentially, you will learn about 49 processes that make up project management, and you will learn how to apply different processes at different times, depending on the situation you're facing. All right. So during the exam and even during this class, we will ask you to put on your PMI hat. PMI is what is the Project Management Institute, based in the US, and they're the ones who made the project management certification. All right. They're the ones who made the certification. And so it's true that they did come up with this body of knowledge of project management based on a survey they did on over 8,000 companies and organizations that have been working on projects for decades. So they came up with the best practices, which is what this class teaches, is that these are the best practices in project management that have been somehow standardized. They have been standardized. And when you have a project in front of you, if you apply some of these best practices, you have more chances to do your projects and to deliver it on time, on budget, and within the target, so the scope. That's why those are the 3 baselines. But the other restrictions, but you'll see as we go ahead. So when you are, so this is to say there are other bodies of knowledge. All right, there are other bodies of project management, right, institutes. There's the Prince 2 in the UK. I'm sure France has its equivalent of project management, I'm sure. And there are different bodies of project management, but the PMI is the most recognized around the world and the most used, and is also ISO certified, certified by the International Standard Organization, for the quality and its processes. So when you are doing the exam, think about the PMI's best answer, not so much your experience or your not so much your project management experience, although that could help, but always think, what did PMI say is the best answer? And it doesn't test really your common sense, although project management is very logical. It doesn't test your knowledge of industry standards, it doesn't, or your knowledge of software or hardware tools. So what you will do again when you're ready for the exam, you go through this, you join, you go through this list, you break the projects you've done before in process groups, then by hours, and then you answer in summary in 300 to 550 characters, things about your project, and then you have a point of contact to confirm that what you're saying is the truth. And as you apply, you have to use sentences that are in the same jargon, if you could say, in the same language of project management. So with this class, you will learn, in a sense, a new language. You're learning a new language. It's as if you're learning, say, Russian, all right? A new professional language. So as I said, project management has been standardized and in a sense codified, so that when, if you are, say I'm in Cameroon, Igor is in Burkina Faso, Isabel, who's on the call here, she's in France, Velvita, I'm not sure where she is right now, but Christelle, who will be joining, is in the UK, right? So if you have a project we are doing, the reason why it's codified, is standardized, is so that what, when I say to Christelle, who's in the UK, if I tell her, okay, right now we need to collect the requirements, she knows exactly what process I'm talking about, and she knows exactly what we will need. All right. So when I would say it's time to perform our qualitative risk assessments, you, Igor, will know exactly what I'm talking about. Silvana, who's here, will know exactly what I'm talking about, and she will know what we need to bring on the table, what we need as technique to use, and what we need to produce. All right. That's why this was standardized and codified into, in a sense, a new language. And so during this class, you will learn the new language of project management. And even if you've been in project management already, you will learn the new language of explaining what you had already saying or what you were already doing with the global international standards of how it should be said or how it should be explained. All right. So that you, who is working for, this international organization, you can speak the same language as this one speaking, working for an IT Silicon Valley company. You can speak the same language as another one working for a government in Europe. You can speak the same language as another one in Asia working on a business project. All right. So it makes it easier. It makes, working easier, and it makes a delivery of project easier. So you understand why there needs to be a new jargon that you need to learn, like an ABC. Need to learn new sentences. You need to learn new ways, new techniques, and etc. All right. So that's to test that you actually did a project management course. When you apply, you need to use those terms to apply in on the website. So you say things like, I tested and verified compliance with user requirements. When you're doing, maybe did an agile project. I created and managed an active project plan. Right. We detailed WBS's work breakdown structure. I provided weekly updates to team members on progress. Other ones, when you're in the phase of initiating, you can use sentences or words like, I defined the scope of this project. I projected the risks all right, of the project on which I am. I assisted with developing the project charter, right? I identify key stakeholders, right? So I mean, we do this all the time, right, in different projects at different degrees. Now you're just using PMI words, project management terms, to explain what you've already done, whether it's in event planning, whether it's in civil society organization meetings, whether it's in telecom, we have a telecom engineer with us here, or whether it's we have a NGO mama who is here in security, conflict and security. So basically using the terms that you would be learning during the class. And so this is all about application. When you're ready, you go through these first slide, says 9 to slide 14. And the beautiful thing about the project management certification is that afterwards you do have to keep learning, continue learning to in order to preserve your certification. So I am right now 7 PDUs away, and my certification, I have to finish those 7 PDUs before next week. Talk about pressure. So after teaching gives you some PDUs. Taking classes gives you PDUs. Writing books or articles on project management can give you PDUs, which are professional development units. And attending Project Management Institute meetings, which are great, right? Because they're chapters of project managers in different. I'm sure in Burkina Faso, so there should be a chapter in different cities around the world, in Paris, in London, in Douala, right? In the US, they're all over. So it's also a great place to network and to meet other professionals in the field of project management. And failure to attend your 60 PDUs will make you lose your PMP certification. You don't want that. And you'll have to resubmit your application and retake the exam. Oh, no, you don't want that. All right. So let's jump right in it. We are on class number 0. As I told you, class number 0 is the project management framework foundational class. So it will take a little longer. You will hear a lot of new verbs, words, explanations. So I'm preparing you already. All right. We're building a house together. And this is the foundation, right? The foundation on which we will start, and we will continue the classes ahead. So it's very important that you are attentive. I tell people that even if you want to follow the class by video afterwards, make sure that the first 2 classes you understand the groove, the why, the terminologies, where we're going, the flow. So you make sure you understand that before you can afford to maybe, miss maybe one class. And so, we understand. But as I said, this is an accelerated program. It's only 5 days. So missing an entire day will be really hard. It would be really, it would be tough on your knowledge, on your growth in your knowledge. All right. So, project management framework, as I said, this is a framework. So that means that it is within a certain sphere that we are talking, that we are discussing. It's from a certain perspective, lenses that we are seeing. All right. And so we see projects in a certain way. And this class defines the terms through which we are seeing a project. And so every project in a traditional life cycle, which is called the predictive or plan-driven project life cycle, has different measurement points. And we call these a life cycle. All right. It shows the initiating, the different phases, which are, you start by selecting and initiating a project. And the ending gate for this phase is delivering a project charter. And you'll know what that means in the class afterwards. Then the next phase is planning. And then after the planning, the planning gives way to a kickoff meeting. All right, where it's like, okay, let's get going. The project starts. Let's go. And then after the kickoff meeting, it's true that sometimes even before the kickoff meeting, some execution could start. But executing starts intensely, and during the execution, the progress reports that are being created. And as you're executing, you also start to monitor and control. And we'll speak about that more intensely in depth in the slides afterwards. And then after that, there's a closing and realizing of the project and administrative closure. At the end of this life cycle, usually you see this little curve here is when you measure the benefits, which is very important to do. Very important to do. Usually, being able to measure the benefits is easier. Well, you can better measure the benefits sometimes when the project is even already finished, and some time has passed, maybe 6 months after the project is done, to see what was the impact really, what was the ultimate outcome of the project. And so, project management, as I explained, which was designed and created by the Project Management Institute, has 49 processes so far. They keep changing it and changing it. But for the best practice of project management, they realized that in the most complete, robust kind of projects, all right, there are 49 processes that are usually used and executed. Best practices. There could be more. You could dissect it to more. But the best practice is this. And of course, it could be less. All right. So it's true that we have not even defined what a project is yet. And we'll define it during the class, but just we'll review it during the class. But a project, unlike a business, has a beginning, has an end, is a temporary endeavor with a unique product at the end. All right. So, as I usually give the example, you say you're in a telecom company, Camtel. All right. Camtel is a telecom company, and Camtel operates as a business. All right. So that means that there's no beginning, there's no end. As they started, they wanted it to live for 99 years. But Camtel is moved, stimulated, and propelled by projects, because project brings new blood and fire. Projects of what? So Cantel, the telecom company, is a business. They'll have a project, say they want to launch the 5G network. All right, 5G network in the entire city of Douala in Cameroon. That in itself is a project. Launching the 5G network in Douala is a project. But once the 5G network is operational and is working, it becomes business as usual. All right. Why is launching in a project? Because it has a beginning, it has an end. They'll say in 1 month, in 1 year, it could be in 1 month, it could be in 6 months, it could be even in 10 years. Because temporary does not mean is short. It could be a 10-year project. Now, we try to shy away from doing projects that are too long, because there are many things that can slip in the way. So usually we try to segment projects. At least you try to do a project within an amount, a reasonable amount of time that can be measured, and where things will not, slip away, where there will not be too much risk because of the length. But there are projects of 10 years. So in a project that is constrained by time, constrained by your budget, so it's not limitless budget, and constrained by deliverables, a target. And these projects, there are 49 processes that the Project Management Institute determined to be very key in order to lead the project from the start, initiating, to the closing. All right. Yeah. And so as you look at this table, yeah, this is a table you should memorize. The first thing to memorize for those who will be doing the certification, and I'll explain why. Because I did the certification within 1 month. I did just like you're doing, a 1 week class, right? Accelerated class in the US. 1 week, studied for 2 weeks, and then the last week I went for the exam. And one of the advice they're giving us was to memorize this, and it was really beneficial during the exam, so that because the exam is so intense, you don't have the time to be thinking what process is where, what comes before what does this, when do I do this, is it in monitoring, is it in closing, is it in planning, you know. So it's a good place, it's a good table to memorize. But beyond memorizing, you have to understand why these processes are where they are, and what you need to create, the deliverable from each process. All right. And we'll break it down during the class. So just catch your breath, and we'll break every single one of these down within the class. So for you to understand where we are going and how we are going, we will be going through the life cycle of a project, that is from initiating to planning to executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So we'll be going vertically, all right? But then we'll be covering each knowledge area of a project. So we will start with integration management after this foundational class. Then we will go down. Us, we our solutioners, we decided to reshape the way we're teaching it, so that you understand a little bit better the flow of how it is in a normal project. Um, so we'll start with integration management, then we will go to stakeholder management tomorrow, and communication management. The two are always they're very linked. So that's why we chose to combine them. And then we'll do the three baseline topics: scope, schedule, cost, before coming back on resource management, quality management, risk management, and procurement management. All right. That's how we'll go through the week. So, and we'll explain this even further. So we sent you by email a table like this that we highly encourage you to print out, so that as we're going through the class, you will always be able to locate yourself where we are. Because as you can imagine, with this amount of material, it's always important to review where am I standing? Where are we going? What is she talking about? All right. So make sure you print out the 49 processes table that we sent you. All right. So there's some key concepts in project management that we want you to have, so you understand the spirit behind it, as I like calling it, the spirit behind it. Okay, so in project management, we'll speak a lot about scope. Right, projects have defined objectives, so the scope is usually progressively elaborated, and depending on the type of project on which you are, whether it's a predictive project or an adaptive project or agile, the scope will be different in its capacity to be elaborated progressively. So it's very important in traditional project management, at least, to get a correct scope statement, even in agile actually, and to pin down exactly what the customer wants. Exactly what the customer wants. And so this is part of what they will call business analysis. I don't know if you heard about the job profession of business analyst, um, but business analyst analysis merges in a way inside project management. A good part of it, not all of it. It's kind of like a subset of some of the knowledge areas of project management. And in business analysis, you dwell a lot on pinning down exactly what the customer wants, right? Very crucial. And so the second thing that we'll learn also, which are key concepts in project management, is change. You know, the project manager expects change to happen and implement processes to keep change managed and controlled. All right. 2020, we know what year, how the year 2020 has been. It's been a year of change. So in the professional, because We keep on learning and upgrading ourselves professionally, and so many things have changed, even in the project management institution itself. And a lot of people are focusing now even on the uh, profession, quote unquote, of change manager. Because as we see, 2020 showed us there'll be constantly change, and you have to understand change management and know how to use change on projects. So change has to happen, in an agreed upon formal process. So it's not very agile here. Even in agile processes, change has to be documented and agreed upon to some degree, to a great a certain extent, yeah. Then planning, right? Planning. Project management is progressively elaborated. The beginning in initiating, you'll have high level information, right? High level information, when you speak about high level information, is what the big lines, the big idea. All right. I want to build a house, and I want it to have 5 rooms, 2 living rooms, and I want it to have 2 stories with a blue roof. Big idea. All right. High level idea when you're initiating. But once you start the planning, it starts getting more detailed. My 5 rooms, I want each 5 room to have a bathroom, and I want each 5 room to represent the, 5 of the 7 colors of the rainbow, blue, green, red, yellow, purple, so you start getting that detail, and I want the paint on the walls to be acrylic paint, and I want the floors to be wooden tiles, so you get that detail once you start in the planning. And the more you plan, progressively you elaborate on the what precisely is needed. That's another concept. The other concept is that management, project management. The project manager manages the project team to meet project objectives, right? And then success is important to know what will measure the success of the project before you even start the project, right? Will it be measured by the product and project quality, by the timeliness, being able to do the project on time, submit it on time, and comply to budget, or by the degree of customer satisfaction? Know that beforehand. And the last thing I want us to take note of is the difference between monitoring and controlling. I know in the development world, because we have a student from NGO and civil society here, in the development world, monitoring, they usually speak about project monitoring and evaluation, right? In project management, we speak about monitoring and controlling. It's true that there's some evaluation that happens within monitoring and reporting, right? That happens usually still in project management. And so here the difference will be, what is one is very action oriented, the other one is more observance oriented. All right. So monitoring, you're observing, right? You're measuring what is actually happening versus um, what was planned. All right. So you would say we had planned, as I usually give the example, to paint a 4 wall room, like this room here, 4 walls, in 4 days. All right. We wanted 2 painters to paint it in 4 days. I say 2 painters in 4 days. And you are the project manager, and by day 2, instead of having done 2 walls, the project is still on wall 1. They have not finished the first wall yet. The 2 painters have not finished the first wall yet. So the monitoring would be saying we are, say, 50%, right, behind schedule, and we have, there's a variance. This is a variance, measuring the variance. All right, from what was planned. What was planned is that day 2 we have finished the second wall, but we are day 2 and we're still on the first wall. So there's a variance there and there's a problem. Controlling now comes with corrective or preventive action. All right, when monitoring shows trends of problems that could come, or variances of actual baselines. So if the monitoring also showed that, has shown that, okay, we're behind schedule because maybe one of the painters has not also been coming, because you're taking down data, right? One of the painters has not been coming, so it's only one painter who has been working. By day 2, the controlling would say, well, we'll say, hey, We might get another painter and cancel the other painters, the initial painters contract, urgently take another painter to jump right in so that we can finish the project on time. All right. So controlling comes with corrective or preventive action if monitoring shows trends of problems that could come or variances of actual baseline. So again, with project success, it's very important to know what you would measure the success of your project from. Would it be by meeting agreements? All right, meeting the project finishing on within the cost, schedule, and specifications. So the scope, or customer success. So you met the need of your customer. The customer said, "I wanted you know, a face mask, a black face mask, made of leather," and then you delivered that. That's meeting the need of the customer. Deliverables used, right? That the customer is actually using what you created. Is using, say you wanted a teacup, he created it and the customer is using it, and then the customer is satisfied, right? You put a smile on your customer's face. That's a measure of success. You can also measure your success by performing organization success. So some projects are internal, so it's your organization is doing a project to help internally, so they're recruiting, you're the project manager of your organization. Say it's say General Electrics, and they want to get more market share, so they're transforming things inside and stuff, so they're getting more market shares, they're developing maybe a new product or new technology. If that is done, wow, hooray. Or your project also can be, the success of your project could be measured based on the project team's success. So maybe you develop loyalty within team members, you develop the project team, and you created satisfaction for the team. All right. And so, as a project manager, what are some of the skills that you need to develop? Number one, you need to be a great leader, all right? Because project management is all about, as a manager, you're leading your team, you're leading stakeholders, you're leading different kind of people. So you have to develop your leadership skills. And we cover a bit of that, good practices that can help you. Then communicating, as you'll see in communication management tomorrow, 90 about 90% of the project manager's role is to communicate. All right, it's your duty to communicate to your team, to your stakeholders, to your senior managers, to your third parties, to the government. It's your role to communicate. Negotiating, because there's a lot of negotiating that comes. Say you're in a company that has different projects are battling for funds, and you're a project manager and you want your project to win, you have to go and negotiate. You also have to negotiate for maybe an additional talent you need from a different department. You have to negotiate. Problem solving, right? I mean, when you handle a project, there are always problems that come up. Whoop, and this happened. Oh, the electricity went out. Oh, this person didn't come. The person was sick. Oh, the vendor did not show up. Oh, this happened. Problems, problems, problems. So you have to develop your mindset of, you know what? I'm a problem solver. I'm a solutioner. And whatever problem comes ahead, I'm tackling it. Tackling it. Bring it on. Tackling it. All right. So that's the project manager's role. And then influencing decisions, influencing people to consensus, and influencing. And then essentially you have to be a jack of all trades, right? A jack of all trades, that means you have to know a little bit of everything. All right. As you saw in the table, even as you can imagine, the 10 knowledge areas that you have to learn, it's actually giving you a bit of knowledge, not a bit, a comprehensive knowledge of each one of those sectors. But in real big time projects, sometimes those different knowledge areas have someone in charge of it, right? So procurement, you could be in a company where procurement already has a department. Risk management, when you're in banking, in the bank, if you're a project manager in a bank, risk management, they already have a department of risk, managing risks. Communication management, you could be in an organization, and usually the organizations already have a communication department, marketing, communication, and stuff. Resource management, right? Most organizations have human resources department. So you see that those 10 knowledge areas in most organization institutions already have either departments or people in charge of these, right? So, oops. So you do have to be a jack of all trades. You have to be a jack of all trades. So that means you have to be, a good part about what you're gonna do. And now, as a manager, you can integrate and coordinate the work. And then projects have governance. So these are the group within the organization or outside the organization that looks at how the project work is being performed to ensure that it is being done the right way. It typically takes place throughout the entire project lifecycle. So some competencies that you as a project manager need to have at the different stages of the life cycle of the project are the following. In initiation, as you initiate a project, you need to have effective questioning and generating feedback. Why? Because you need to know, why are we doing this? Where are we going? Why is this important? Of what exactly do you want, right? Because if you're project manager for your own project or even for the project of a customer or the sponsor, you need to ask the customer the right questions, right? So why do you want this? What is the goal? And all that. Persuasive and marketing selling skills, right? Because you will, if you're in a big organization, whether it's in government, whether it's in a multinational organization or corporate world, you need to persuade, market, sell your project, sell the importance of your project. Why should they do your project and not the project of your colleague? All right. Why should they put the resources on the project that you're handling and not another project? Then listening skills, listening to the customers. All right. A few things here. All right. Can you hear me? 1 second, please. I'm fixing a technical issue here. All right, and in planning as a project manager, you need different skills. So project management skills and knowledge, all right? Consensus building, okay? Technical skills and theoretical knowledge that you will learn here. And then implementation, you need the ability to get along with team, along with the team, to be a team player, to be result oriented, of course, to be truthful and honest in the status of the project. And as you close, you need writing skills because there'll be a lot of reporting, project reports, to share information and credit to your team. Don't take all the glory for yourself. To your team, to your senior management, make sure you share credit. And then you need to have some pride in your workmanship and quality. So that means you're happy when your work is well done. And then truthful and honest again, truthful with the results and the challenges that you faced and the successes that you also had. So as we said, the two differences in life cycles. There is a product life cycle, as you can see, and there's the project life cycle. Can you guys see the? Okay, here it is. There's the product life cycle. Okay, it's not working as planned. So we have the product life cycle and the project life cycle. The product life cycle is a life cycle from the conception of a new product to its withdrawal. So a product can span across many projects, right? So you have the product like a phone, the next iPhone 12 or something is a product, right? And within that, there are many projects within it. A project life cycle is, what you need to do to produce the deliverables of the project. So this phone could have probably even 10 projects in it. The project of conceiving the phone is a whole project. The project of deciding the software of the phone is a whole project. The project of uh, marketing, finding the right customers is a whole project. So you get the drift. When Boeing the plane, they do a project of a new plane. That's a huge project. Well, it's a huge product, but there are probably many projects, intertwined in that. All right. And so what you have to know is that there are different kinds of project life cycles. There's not just one kind. We showed you the typical traditional life cycle of a project, right? Initiating, planning, executing, closing, and realizing, and then this curve, and then afterwards doing your benefit measurements. But then there are different kinds of project life cycles. In construction projects usually have their own kind of life cycles. Life cycle is what from the beginning, is say the pre-planning phase, right? Pre-planning where you define the scope and execution strategy, then the designing, and then after the designing you have with the designing you get the procurement and construction documents. Then procurement, you see that procurement, sometimes you procure things, so you'll say I'll get cement, sand, this material to fix this building. Sometimes you get all of that in construction before even, of course, right, before the project starts, because you need all those different material. And if you're a company, in most cases, you're not the one producing most of those things. Mm-hmm. So procurement sometimes a lot of the time in construction happens before construction. And then you have construction and you have the facilities and processes, and then startup till the production attainment. So you see that construction project life cycles are, a little different. It's not the same rhythm, it's not the same, not the same phases and steps as a predictive life cycle. Then we have the DMAIC model. The DMAIC model usually I use a lot more with research projects, right? Research projects. So, you define the problem, or projects, now that everyone is running and is trying to get a COVID-19 vaccinations, which thank God I'm in Cameroon, because I don't know how y'all are gonna do there. But yeah, deuces to that. Um, but yeah, so research, it was to say that um, research labs and in pharmaceuticals and research, even in college researchers usually use a DMAIC model. So you define the problem, you come up with the problem statement, then you measure, and then you get fact gathering defined and fact collected, then you analyze, right, and you come up with the root causes identified and statistically proven, then you improve, what was the problem, and come up with a solution. You implement solution implemented, and then you control, all right, methods in place to maintain improvements. Now, the common buzzword that everyone is using now in project management, which is actually is a mindset, a different way of approaching projects, is the agile projects. All right, agile projects are used in projects that are not so predictive. That's why it's adaptive. You're adaptive. You're adapting to change. You're adapting to different circumstances. And so, agile projects also have their type of life cycle. And so you envision the project, right? You have a guy who says, hey, I like to have an application that will help me to, book uh, book make an appointment with the a babysitter, closest to my house as the need comes. Say right. So say you have a last minute emergency, you want a babysitter, and you're in this neighborhood and there's no one, and you don't know if there are any babysitters around. So kind of like imagine like an Uber of babysitters. So the closest around you, reliable, secure, and everything, you can come and babysit at a reasonable price. So that's a project envisioning. All right, project envisioning. They come up with a charter. You still need a charter in an agile project. The charter essentially says this is the high level information I need. This is the high level idea, the scope, the risks, the potential risk, and the budget I have. Tentative budget. Let me say I have 5 million to do an app like that, and so from there, once you have the charter, there's a requirements gathering. This is now when you go into details. Okay, what do you want? How do you want the features? How do you want it to be? Do you want it to be pop up, things to pop up as announcement come up, or do you want it to be interactive? Do you want people to be putting feedback and all that? So you get requirements gathering is very important in the agile life cycle, and then you get a product backlog, which has the different user cases or user stories. What the customer wants, um, and then from there, from what the customer wants, that's what helps now your team to start sprints. What they call sprints is what is different incremental degrees of executing. All right, incremental phases of execution. So you plan what you're going to do. You develop the solution. Okay, we say we have a sprint. The sprint always has, you need to put it within a time. You could say 1 week sprint. It could be a 1 month sprint. You decide. You say, okay, well, we have 1 week. Right. Let's say you were in this COVID-19 kind of season. Many people did sprints in their organization. We have 1 week to determine an app that will help with COVID-19 patients and all that and all that. We have 1 week. We develop. All right. We plan. We develop the solution. You close. You send it. You test it already. Right, with a customer, or with maybe a focus group, and obviously the customer too. You test it. They figure out there's this bug, there's this thing. I wanted this addition. You replan. All right. New product log. You send it back, develop again, close it, test it. So that's how you do your sprints. All right. Until the production release. All right, until you release the product or the software. Or so that's why it works a lot very well with IT projects, because IT is constantly changing and constantly evolving, and the need of the customer, you have to really be in connection with that. All right, so those are agile life cycles. And more about agile, just so you have a good idea of the difference between agile and predictive. So not all projects can be made into an agile projects, all right? Because many projects you have to plan way ahead, and like with construction, is you can add some agile elements to some areas, but in itself, it's very predictive, it's very traditional. You cannot, say, we will is when we will do the foundation that will determine which wall to raise. You see what I mean? There's some in the structure of the engineering, that's the structure has to already plan, if this will be 3 floors or 5 floors. You cannot just go with the flow and do sprints and then fix and do sprints again. But you can add some agile elements to a construction project. So your management of your stakeholders, your management of your communication, your management of risks, the different elements that you can add the agile mindset to it. So agile projects are um, project development exists in three main approaches. So you have plan driven or waterfall or serial. which is a predictive life cycle, right? You can predict. This is a traditional thing. You don't need to, come up and reinvent the wheel. You have change driven. Change driven is what so much change is happening. You have to be very adaptive. You have to be flexible, and you have to be agile, essentially. And then hybrid of both. You can mix the two depending on where the need is. So yeah, the project's inherent characteristics determine which life cycle is best fit for the project. So what differentiates a life cycle is not whether planning is done, because planning is done for both. Many people get confused since Agile has become so popular that in Agile you don't plan, you just go and you just doing the work, and then you do as it goes. But you actually do plan in Agile, but it's just how much planning is done and when. All right. In predictive plan driven projects, you do a lot of planning, at the beginning, and then you start executing. And then, of course, you can still do some planning and monitoring and control. You can still do some planning, but you spend a lot of time in planning, and sometimes it takes longer than getting it on the ground. Whereas with Agile, you do a quick planning, and you quickly get adapt, and you quickly get to implementation. And so adaptive life cycles are usually short cycles plus results review plus necessary adaptation. So they'll rather break it down into, if it's a 6 months project, they could do short cycles of two weeks, all right, with the results that you created within those 2 weeks reviewed by the customer, so that you don't wait 3 months after and the customer is like, what did you do? And then you show, and they're like, no, I actually didn't want this to be here, and I didn't want this to be there. So the result review I reviewed more, and you adapt to the need of the customer. So it requires a mastery of tools and techniques, and to understand how to apply them effectively. So the agile life cycles, as we said, you have predictive life cycle, right? So you take advantage of things that are known and proven in a traditional project. Then this reduced uncertainty and complexity allows teams to segment work into a sequence of predictable groupings, right? So that's why it's important. You can do it in very predictable fields, traditional fields. Then you have iterative life cycles. Iterative life cycles are what? It allows feedback on partially completed or unfinished work to improve and modify that work. So these are new terms, right? Iterative life cycle, let me give you an example. Yeah, the example of the dress, right? You are, planning your wedding, you have a wedding dress. So as the as you are implementing the you have a wedding, two-piece, for example, a two-piece dress, you know, a top bustier and a long skirt with the trail and stuff. I know the guy is kind of like, okay, what are these women talking about? But bear with us. So, iterative life cycle will do what? You as a project manager, you have your customer who is the lady to who's getting married, who's supposed to get married. Iterative is that as soon as you start doing the blouse, the top part, right, of the thing, you show her, is this lace exactly what you wanted? Come and touch it. Is the quality okay? Is this white the right white you wanted, or was it an ivory white that you want? So it allows for feedback on partially completed. So the dress is not completed yet, but you already have feedback on unfinished work, right? So that if she's like, no, just modify it this way, improve it in this manner, then it's easier. Okay, Igor. Thanks for the comment. He says men can get married as well. All right. So you see, you can modify, right? The work can be modified while it's still being done. Or an example now with IT would be, what is you're developing that application, right? And before you even go into the beta version of the application, the customer, you can already show to the customer like, hey, this is how this is the feature that we've created. Look at how it's flowing. Look at how it's working. And the customer could be like, no, I want this icon to be on the right. I want this to, when the visitors arrive on the platform, to see this image, the iterative, all right, with unfinished work. The next one is incremental, right? There's a really a nuance there, and sometimes the two words can be mixed. But iterative is unfinished work, right? Partially completed work. Incremental life cycle is what you provide finished deliverables that the customer may be able to use immediately. All right. So that means for the wedding dress example, for example, um, when you finish with the blouse, you can give it to the bride. You can deliver it. And she can already use the blouse. It's true that, of course, it's supposed to be a two-piece, but she can already use that product because it's already a finished deliverable that she can use. And, when you finish the skirt, you give it to her. With the IT product, it would be what? It would be hard for the app to give the app when it's not yet finished. But say, it was three different, features, right? One for students, one for teachers, one for the school administration, right? An app like that. Once you're done with the feature for students, you could, release it so that the customer can start using it while you're finishing the part for the teachers and the administrators, just to give an idea. You see, so it's a product as a deliverable that is already finished, that can be used, although the project is not yet finished, right? So let's use a third example. Let's say you are a project manager of the a company. Say MTN is around Cameroon, is around Africa. MTN, the telecom company, and during in March, April, when COVID went up, all the companies' policies with that everyone should do a face mask, wear with face mask. So you won that project, all right, to do say 1,000 face masks for MTN. So iteratively, how can you work it? How can this project be done iteratively? You have the masks, all right. As soon as the tailor starts doing it, you start showing it to MTN. Hey, is it exactly how you wanted it? Do you want it to be embroidered this way? So they can already give you feedback incrementally. As soon as you do like 100, you send it to MTN, they start using it while you're doing the next 100. You send it, they're using it while you're doing the next 200. You see what I mean? So you see the difference, right? So what Agile does, the Agile lifecycle actually leverages both the aspects of iterative and incremental characteristics. So Agile, you allow feedback on partially completed work, right, or unfinished work, and at the same time you can release deliverables as they are being developed, as they're being created. So when teams use agile approaches, they iterate over the product to create finished deliverables, and the team gains early feedback and provides customer visibility, confidence, and control of the product. So because the team can release earlier, the project may provide an earlier return on investment because the team delivers the highest value work first. All right. And so in project management in general, we speak about the triangle of constraints. Of course, with time, this has developed, and they're not just three constraints. So that is time, scope, and cost. The other constraints, such as quality, resources, and customer satisfaction. But in general, traditionally, in project management, we've seen the triple constraints of this triangle. So, if you're a project manager and a customer tells you, hey, I want this to be delivered within time, in 1 week, I want 1,000 masks in 1 week at say 100,000 francs CFA. those three usually will not, work together, right? Because it's usually a give or take with time, cost, and scope. And so when cost changes, say, instead of when cost will change, say they'll pay maybe the reasonable price, say 500,000, right, in 1 week for that, then you can increase labor, right, so they can do the work on time and within scope. When scope changes, they say, hey, we don't want just one flower on the face mask. We want 4 flowers. The scope changed. So it usually probably would increase the time, the cost, and also the time, right? So always be sure to see how one aspect affects the other two. But also be aware that there are other constraints like quality, resources, human resources or material resources that may not be enough, or quality that can suffer, and customer satisfaction that is very key. So when we see project management, as we said, there are 5 process groups: initiation, planning and design, executing, and monitoring and control, and closing. So as you see here on this table, planning, many people sometimes they think is after planning, exactly after all the planning. That's when you start executing. And so you execute and then you start monitoring. Whereas if you see here, that's not really how it happens, right? To be on track, right? To deliver a right project. Once planning starts and you have agreed on a good part of the planning, you can actually start executing on the key things that have been approved and released. You can start executing while they continue planning other aspects, right? And while you start executing it, that's when you can start also monitoring and controlling. Exactly, at the same time. So it's important to monitor and control the execution early on so that you can fix mistakes that would have been, you know, ignored for maybe a week or two when you choose to decide monitoring and control. So let's say you're doing an event, all right? You're doing an event and you agreed, you planned, okay, this is how we'll plan this event. We'll have 100 guests and there'll be the DJ, there'll be the buffet, there'll be the guest speaker and everything all is planned. And so you go into execution mode and you're executing, your team is executing. But the thing is that as you've planned and as you start executing, you as a project manager, or if you are not, say, responsible for it, although eventually you'll be accountable for it. If you're not responsible for it, you can assign someone who's responsible of monitoring and controlling. That means making sure that what we decided to execute is actually working. So it's not monitoring and controlling is not just monitoring and controlling the results. You have to see the difference there. Is monitoring and controlling the process. Are you understanding? Yes. Yeah. So that means that you're not waiting for the DJ to be there and to start playing music, to start monitoring and controlling that. You're monitoring and controlling that the DJ has all his stuff and that he's on his way to the event, first of all right? You start from there. And you're monitoring and controlling that the caterer, you know, it knows that she has to be there by this time, and 2 hours before you say, where are you, an hour before, if she's stuck, to avoid risk, depending if you're in Cameroon, to completely avoid a risk. We'll talk about risk management. To completely avoid risk, you go and take them where they are. You bring them to the event, because we know cultural differences. In Cameroon, someone can tell you I'm 30 minutes away, and they are still like, they've not even taken their shower yet. They're still chilling at home. So essentially, when you're monitoring, controlling, you're verifying that what was planned is actually what is actual, but not just the result, but the process of creating the result. All right. That's where you actually take the edge as a project manager, is not just being surprised with was the results delivered or not, but is the process to creating the results, the process to creating the deliverable, is it on track? All right. And after that, you have the closing. After the deliverables have been created, you can formally close the project. And so, as we said, the five process groups. The initiating process group is tested 13, usually 13% in the exam. That's where you start. Initiating is what the project is when the project is authorized. It's high level planning. You verify the project can be completed with given constraints, right? If you can't, you go back to customer or to the sponsor. You're like, hey, I can't do this within this time at this budget. You either have to increase the time for me to deliver, or you have to um, increase the budget so that I can get some outside resources. Sorry. So I can get some outside resources to finish the project. All right. So, and then you have planning. Planning is creating the plan for how you will do the planning and how you will execute, monitor, and control the project. And then executing, the team completes the work according to the processes and procedures detailed in the project management plan. Monitoring, controlling. So while work is being done, the work result or work performance information are fed into the monitoring and control to make sure the project is tracking to the baselines in the project management plan. And closing, the project and its various phases are brought to a formal end. So, you provide final results to the stakeholder and to the sponsor. All right, so now we are going into the depth now of the classes. This is how the classes will be structured. We're still on class zero, all right, just so we can situate ourselves. We're still on class zero. We're explaining to you the why, the terminologies, the jargon. And so this is how we'll break down the classes. We will cover knowledge areas, all right? Knowledge areas after knowledge areas. So after this foundational class, we will work on integration management. And after integration management, we will do stakeholders management and communication management. All right. Now, with each knowledge area, we will take each knowledge area and we will go through all the processes of the knowledge area. So, integration management, which is a knowledge area, we will go through the 7 processes of integration management. All right. We will go vertically. But what I want you to understand is that in a project, right, this is for teaching sake. The reason why we're going knowledge area by knowledge area is for teaching sake, so that you can locate yourself based on the knowledge area. If we had to teach the way it is done in a project management, in a project, we would have taught by, you know, both vertical and horizontal. So we'll have taught by process groups. As we said, process groups is initiating, then planning, then executing, then monitoring, controlling, then closing. So if we had to teach the class as it is done in a project, we would have done first day initiating. The first process of initiating is what? Process of initiating. Develop.
Develop project charter.
Exactly. Develop your project charter. I'm so happy that you have your one of our students here, she has printed out 49 processes. So the first process of initiating is develop a project charter. The second process of initiating is what? Note down. No.
Down.
Yes.
Identify stakeholders.
Identify stakeholders. You see, it would have been spanning through different knowledge areas. If we had done the class process groups by process group. So we first do initiating, then planning, then executing, right? But that's not how we're doing the class. I want you to understand, the methodology. Then that means that if the next day we would have done planning, we would have done how many processes? About 22, right? At the top, we have it's kind of the amount is at the top of when you see planning, there's a number next to it on top there.
There's no out 24.
24, right? So we would have done 24 processes. And then afterwards we would have done 10 processes, and then afterwards we would have done 12 processes. See, so but that's how it's usually done in a project, right? It's done by initiating, then planning, then executing, then monitoring, controlling. But what we will do in the class is we'll do a knowledge area, integration management, spanning on initiating all the way to closing. And then afterwards, we do the next knowledge area, we span through. All right. So it's important to you understand. Now, the processes, what are processes actually? Processes are what you need to do to create a result that would serve as either a deliverable or produce something that the project needs. All right. So 49 processes are the things you will have to do to create, either a task, either a document, either a plan, either a result that the project needs. All right. Now, for each process, you have inputs, you have tools and techniques, and you have outputs. All right. So I have this cup and I want to do ginger tea. I'll open the cup. So this is this is the process. Let me try to explain. I have my I have my ginger. I have my ginger lemon tea in here. It's actually finished. I'm just finishing. All right. The process of developing your ginger tea, ginger lemon tea, sweet ginger lemon tea. So, what would be your input to develop your sweet ginger lemon tea? Ginger, I think my ginger. Lemon, yes. Water, yes. Sweet.
Sweet.
Sugar, yes. Sugar, exactly.
Honey. I don't even know how it would make put honey.
Yes, you can put your honey, right? So those will be your inputs. It goes in there. So what would be your tool? Yeah, the flask, right? The flask.
The spoon to
The spoon to turn it, yes.
What else?
Maybe the other flask that you use to boil the water, right?
Yeah.
That would be a tool. Now, what technique? What would you say would be a technique to do your ginger tea?
Maybe I don't know how to use the different quantity.
Exactly, right? The recipes, the yeah. So you first put a pinch of ginger, and then you do a thing of sugar and stuff, and then you go ahead and then you shake it, and then And so, what would be the output? The sweet ginger tea, exactly. So that would be the output of your process. So, what project management does is what? Is it tells you you're trying to develop something. Now, as we told you, right? So this is a new language that has been that they tried to codify, right? Standardize. So that when I'm saying I want to create a sweet ginger tea, if I'm in Cameroon and I say this to someone in China, they know exactly what I would need as input. They don't have to think so much. They know exactly what I will need as tools and even the techniques. And they know exactly what would be the outputs. So whether it's someone in China or someone in Burkina Faso or someone in South Africa or in France, UK, or America, when you say, I want to develop the project charter of this project, which is the number one process, right?
Yeah.
They will know exactly that these are the inputs you will need. Business documents that are made up of business case and benefit management plan, agreements, enterprise environmental factors, and OPAs. These are the tools and techniques that you will need to use in order to develop your project charter. expert judgment, data gathering, interpersonal and team skills, and meetings. And these are the outputs that will be created when you've developed your project charter. The project charter itself and an assumption log. All right. So that's what project management essentially, when you break it down into small, at the molecular level, if you want to call it that way, at the molecular or the cellular level, um, that's what it boils down to be processes that are put in place to create outputs that are necessary for the project. And so for each one of these processes, like develop project charter, you can see on this slide, there are inputs, their tools and techniques, and their outputs. And all these have been standardized in the sense so that you can manage a project that they give you, in the village or in Dubai, in the middle of the urban, you know, modern Dubai. And so it's very important to understand why we're going to do all these different things and why it's important to know most of these things. So that when you're in front of a process, you know exactly what you need to do, what you need to bring in, what you need to do, what you need to put in, right? What you need to do, the shaking, the technique, and what needs to come out of it. All right. And so we'll do that for all the 49 processes. We'll need to do that for all the 49 processes. That's what the class is all about. We will cover each of the 49 processes from today till Saturday. But now we're covering each of the 49 processes within what? Knowledge areas. You see? So they'll say in integration, this is what it's all about in integration. When you have to communicate, these are the processes that you have to take into consideration. These are the things you have to bring in order to create, your communication plan. These are the things you have to bring in order to manage your stakeholders. These are the things you have to bring in, the techniques you're going to use in order to assess or to work on your risks. All right. So that's essentially what we will be working on. So that said, although when you hear 618 ITTOs, you're like, what? How am I supposed to know all of them? You're not. You're not. There are actually a lot of repetitive inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs that are almost always present in different processes. And so those ones, we will cover them during this class today so that afterwards, whenever we mention a tool or technique, an input, a tool or technique, or an output, it will be those that we have not discussed today. That's why today is very foundational, right? It's very important. So, all right. So, what are these? We'll speak about the common inputs, we'll speak about the common tools and techniques, and the common outputs. So that means that these ones, you will be seeing them practically everywhere after this in practically all the 49 processes, in most of the 49 processes, not all of them. So it's important you understand them today. So as you said, a total of 618. Some common inputs. There are 4 common inputs. I call them the Fantastic Four. Like the movie Fantastic Four. Yay! It's a good way to remember, to memorize. So inputs are things I need before I can perform a process. So the process I need to do in order to achieve my project, but I need things in order to perform those processes. Number 1 that you'll see all the time and that we will summarize as EEFs is called enterprise environmental factors. All right. And what are enterprise environmental factors? So it refers to both internal and external environmental factors that surround or influence a project's success. Uh-huh. So these could be your company's organization structure, all right, your organization's values and work ethics, local laws and regulations. So the basis of this is what is to say that every project, yes, it's true that I can take a project here and in China and start working on it. But the only reason and ability for me to do a project in China is number one, being conscious of the
Yes.
environmental factors in
Yes.
China,
That.
right?
That's
There, how does the local laws work? What are the regulations? But only beyond that, what is the company's what's the company's
true.
values? If I'm working for, say, like Igor was working for an international organization, you know, is the company's organizational structure more, free, more vertical, more horizontal, sorry, than vertical, right? Is because the way I will work for a project, say within a government project,
Mm.
will be different than if I work
Yeah.
within a startup,
Yeah.
even as the same kind of projects, because I have to be conscious of my
Environment.
environment.
Yeah.
I know that in the governmental structure, there's a lot of hierarchy.
Mm.
Then that means the many steps that missteps I should be aware I'm not doing.
Yeah. Very well.
It's very,
Very.
formal and
Mhm.
hierarchical. And so I should not be burning bridges, even though it will create problems that could have been avoided, right? So you always have to be aware of your enterprise environmental um, factors, abbreviated EEFs. And the other thing that you have to be conscious about is also your organization's appetite for risk. Say you're a banker for Citibank, right? Does it have an appetite for risk? They're handling people's money. So, you have 5 projects in front of you. Will you take the risk of investing in a startup that just came up with the idea, an innovative idea that will save 100,000 people? Well, that's what they say. And you're like, oh, it's interesting, emotionally, you're like, oh, wow, that'll be great. That's awesome. Da, da, da. But you're a banker and you're at Citibank.
Yeah. Well.
you know, the appetite for risk there might be that little versus if
Mm.
maybe you're in a venture capital,
Mm.
organization, or you're in the private equity, organization that takes risks more easily. Um, so you have to be conscious of that, the appetite of your organization for risk, stakeholders' willingness to accept risks, the company's work authorization system, so the way work is authorized. PMIs is project management information systems, like softwares like Microsoft Project. Marketplace conditions, you have to be very aware of that, right?
Mm.
Knowing that, usually you don't want to launch a project like, say, in the middle of the month, right? In our countries like here, because in the middle of the month people don't have money,
Money. Yeah.
right? They're like, who is she talking to? So you time the launching of your project. If it's something that you're selling, you say end of the month, towards the end of the month, beginning of the month, when salaries have just passed, people are still fresh, and they're ready to spend. That's how we cut some of our customers here. Thank you. End of the month kind of things, and thanks to the push and the tip of Isabel last week, who was like, you have to push more. It's end of the month. Push. So conscious of market conditions, and also existing human resources, because you could be in an organization and there are not enough resources to work
Mm.
on your project. So those are EEFs. So number one output that you will see a lot all the time, and when you see it, it means that you have to take into consideration all these different things, are EEFs. Number two are OPAs, organization process assets. So OPAs are assets that organization has. So these include any or all process related assets, right? So these could be typically it's divided into processes, procedures, and corporate knowledge. All right, let me see what. Yes, Igor has a question. Go ahead. Open your mic.
Okay, it's just a general question
Yes.
because you know the amount of work that we have to put in But how do you want us to raise our questions? Like, do you want us to go immediately? If I have a question, I should raise it, or I should just keep it till the end of the session, just for it to, to be smooth enough for you and
Okay.
to be
You can
mindful.
write it in the chat. You can write the question in the chat box, and we'll segment it and then take some pauses in between, and cover the questions.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah. So whenever you write in the chat, I'll look at it and I'll see if I can address it while discussing, or if well, I'll address it at the end of the section. But if you have a question right now, you can ask actually.
I had questions before and then I forgot, so now I know I should write.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, so yeah, the chat box for the others. If you have questions, just feel free to write in the chat. I'll open it right away, and answer in the flow of the thing or after one section. All right. So OPAs. So example of OPAs, of organization process assets, are project templates. All right. So that means that you're usually in an organization where there are templates of how they want their project charter to look like. And if you're in an organization where they don't have templates, then we have templates that we share. So I'll share it probably either today or tomorrow, that you can use as, a starting point. The good thing with OPS is that they help you with your work. So there's some software tools that can also help. you know Included examples of OPAs, you have historical information about the project you've worked on. Say you're organizing a concert, at the Congress Hall, and last year there was you did the same kind of concert with 3,000 people. That's historical information. This is how it happened. These are some things that worked and didn't work. That would be lessons learned. And then guidelines. Guidelines. Your organization may have guidelines. This is how you do this. This is how you shouldn't do this. This is how you you know this is the email etiquette, for example. This is how you respond to emails. This is how
Okay.
you send reports. This is how you do that. And then communication requirements, knowledge base. Lessons learned is essentially what you learned from previous projects, and that helps, right? That helps so that you don't do the same mistakes, or that you maximize on the good practices from the previous projects in the current project. And then project policies, guidelines, and company policies. So in general, what you have to see as the difference between EEFs, enterprise environmental factors, and OPAs is that usually EAFs can constrain, they can constrain, not always, the process. So you were like, hey, let's identify our stakeholders, or let's develop a project charter. Oh no, let me take another one. Let's estimate the budget. All right. Hey, let's do it. The process of estimating budget. Hey, let's do it. And then you start thinking about the EAFs. With this budget, you cannot really go overboard because the company is very, 1 cent. They don't allow freedom in the budget. Or we cannot really do this because the regulations of Cameroon say that you cannot do this way. Or we cannot really add this into this area because So EAFs usually will constrain the process. It creates yeah, boundaries. And OPAs usually will assist, right, the executing of the process. Assist in which way? So you say, hey, I need to do a work breakdown structure, a WBS. Where do I even start? It looks so challenging. And then an OPA would assist you. So it would say, hey, there's a template here. You just need to remove what was there, and then you fix it, and you see if it's adapted to what you have. So it makes your work easier. Or you're saying, oh, I have to identify risks. How do I start with identifying risks? What are the questions I need to ask? What are the questions that we need to take into consideration? And then what will OPA do? We'll say, hey, there's this guideline, yes, there's this guideline that can help you in identifying the risks. It'll ask you different questions so that you can make sure that your team and you are really considering the risks. All right. So EEFs usually constrain, but OPAs they assist. And then the third input that you will see a lot are project documents. These are documents that are created by the project processes. So you'll see things when you see logs or matrices or what else? Milestone, a list, right? These are documents. It could be like a Word document, not that the name may sound fancy, but it's just a Word document or just a chart, right? In the document phase in an Excel sheet. So the project creates lots of documents. Why? Because you need to document everything so that the team is on the same page. Assumption log, issue log, change log, risk registers when you see register, the project charter, stakeholder register, the many documents that the project creates, and they're frequently brought into the processes as inputs also. And then the fourth input that you will see constantly is your project management plan, which is a single approved document that guides the execution, monitoring, and control, and the closure of the project. Tools and techniques that you will see constantly. All right, so the tools and techniques would be your cup. It would be, as just going back to the example of the sweet ginger tea. It would be your cup. It would be, the flask that boiled the water. It would be the spoon you use to turn. It would be the technique of shaking, shaking, shaking. So the different tools and techniques that you use practically all the time when you're going through the process. The number one is expert judgment. Expert judgment is what is saying that I'm calling upon um, you know, subject matter experts in this field, in this process. So when I'm doing estimating my budget, who will I call? I'll try to call an accountant and double check with an accountant. What do you think about these figures? Does this look good? When I'm doing a resource management plan, who would I double check with? The person from HR, right? The resource manager, the human resource manager. Hey, what do you think about this? Is the job description here correct? If they're not the ones doing it, then they're the ones you'll be consulting. If you need to do like an example, we had taught a team from one of our favorite startups here in Cameroon, Gifted Mom. They went through this project management class, and we're giving the example of when they're launching a new product or they want to do something for is it solutions for pregnant women. Who do they seek for expert judgment? A gynecologist, right? A doctor, and maybe a woman who has given birth maybe 4 times already. So she could be a subject matter expert. So essentially what this is saying is that always try to see if there's someone who knows better or who knows more about either the process or the results that you want to create that you can consult to make sure that you are on track. Another tool and technique you will learn or use in many processes are analytical techniques. Essentially, there's a common set of techniques used to understand the root causes of problems or to forecast scenarios, and it can include any type of structured or unstructured analysis. You'll see document analysis, root cause analysis. You see all kinds of analysis in the class, and uh, project management information systems, authorizations to do what you're supposed to do, official work authorization, what needs to be done by whom and how. Automated system to support the project manager by optimizing the schedule and helping to collect and distribute information. And essentially, project management information systems will help, keep track of documents and deliverables. So maybe you'll have it depends on the company in which you are. Some companies already have softwares in order to manage the project knowledge, right, and deliverables. So you just whatever is created, you put it in there. Others don't. Those who are just starting, I tell them, you can use Excel sheets, Microsoft Word sheets, and put it on the Google Drive, which is accessible to everyone, so that everyone is on the same page when it comes to documents and deliverables produced by the project. And project management information systems such as maybe Microsoft Projects, Trello, things like that. It's true that Trello is not too much robust project management. I've heard of Monday. They do a lot of advertisement. Maybe it's because I do a lot of project management research. Monday.com. It's like a project management software, and then primarily contains software will often interface with manual systems. So always have a backup, right, of the software with the manual system, and contains configuration management system to manage different configurations of a product. So also contains project document versions, and configuration management system is used to ensure that new base functionality does not break existing customer features, and that changes are evaluated across all relevant versions of the product, right? You don't want to come up with a version, uh, 12.5.6, like Facebook usually comes up with updates version 12.5.6, and in that version you cancel a feature that was, approved and used and liked by customers. So you need to track in the configuration management system what is added, in order that you don't remove what is relevant from the previous versions. And so when we speak about work authorization system, is used to ensure work gets done at the right time and in the right sequence. All right. And it's part of EDS. All the tools and techniques you will use, you will see a lot. And again, I'm repeating, we will not be reviewing it again afterwards when you see it again. Are facilitation techniques. So facilitators are designed to help groups resolve issues and to reach consensus. And as a project manager, a lot of your role will be to be a facilitator. All right, you'll be a facilitator. And while the project manager is in charge of the project, you will not be in charge of all the groups of stakeholders, right? Because you maybe be in charge of the project, but maybe I'll send Silvana here to go and handle maybe the procurement of tables if I'm doing an event, procurement of tables and chairs. And if there's a meeting that needs to be done, then she needs also to learn how to facilitate the meeting. And then I'll send Luciola, who's right here, to go and handle, say, um, the resource, acquiring the team and training the team. And if she's the one to go into that, she needs to also have those facilitation techniques, so that the key people in the team know how to facilitate discussions. And then group decision making techniques, essentially is just a fancy way of saying the different kinds of techniques of deciding in a group. If there's unanimity means everyone agrees. So if you are 10 of us, 10 on 10, 10 people say yes. There's majority, right? You can say, hey, if we are here, we are 10 of us and we are voting, the majority means 50 plus 1, right? 50% plus 1. So that means it should be 6, because it cannot be 5.5. Since there's not a whole person, there's no half a person. Yeah, I needed to say that. And then there's plurality, which means the largest number of votes. So that means if you're voting, there are 4 people, 4 versus 3 versus 3, the 4 people win. Or dictatorship, one person makes a decision. The project manager says, hey, it's my decision. If you're not, my way or the highway. So these are things you have to determine ahead of time, to determine how the group will make decisions, how your team will make decisions. It's true that the techniques are used differently depending on the subject, right? On budgetary subjects, for example, yes, the project manager could have the final say and say, this is a dictatorship. On the budget, I don't, we're not flinching on this. But on things like maybe stakeholder identification, or how to engage stakeholders, or quality, no, quality, you can also be a dictator on there without a problem. But other things, you would say, hey, you decide on plurality, on unanimity. So it essentially, none of them is in itself essentially wrong or right. It depends on what you have to decide on. Yeah. And then meetings play an important part in management of projects. Meetings are happening all the time in project management, all the time. You have to meet, you have to meet, you have to meet, you have to meet. But you have to make your meetings efficient to maximize on people's time. And you have to make your meetings straight to the point, and the shorter the best. And especially when you already know what you want to discuss. All right. So that's why in the agile project management, they do a lot of stand-up meetings. They'll say, hey, every Monday, first thing in the morning, 30 minutes, stand up. Because when you're sitting down, You're taking your time and you're relaxed and yeah. Whereas stand up is like boom, 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 military style. You say, hey, this is what we have to do this week. This is what we have to deliver. On Friday, we do a catch up meeting, feedback meeting. What was done? Did you do it? Yes. You didn't do it. Why? Da 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 da. You move on. All right. So that's how to make it efficient so that it's not too heavy. Meetings upon meetings. Um, and so this tool appears, yeah, frequently in the 49 processes. So you see meetings all the time. Um, and then finally, common outputs, right? So common things that will come out of processes that you see a lot during the next processes are number one, change requests, and you'll understand it better in integration management. So everyone and everything must be documented and recorded and approved by the project manager, the change control board, or senior management. And so change requests are typically related to corrective actions. So any changes to bring the future results in line with the plan. So maybe you're executing, right? This usually happens when things are executing or when you're monitoring, controlling, and you're seeing that, hey, we're not really on track. So you have to send a change request for corrective action or for preventive action. So changes made to avoid the occurrence of a problem, a defect, or a repair. If you can see it ahead of time, like if you continue going to this speed, we might get into a mistake. You can ask a change request for preventive action. And the work performance data, that would be a common output that you would see. And essentially what this is it's simply the raw data with no additional analysis applied to it. So it often shows up as an output from processes where the work is being executed. So the data by itself, is not overly useful, right? So data would be what, giving the example of the four walls that I had to paint by two painters in 4 days. The data would say, well, the project manager will come, or the person monitoring and controlling would say, day one, half of the wall was done. Um, day two, only one wall was finished. Day three, well, this that was day two, right? You're still monitoring. Day two, only half wall was finished. It doesn't tell you anything. And you say maybe one painter showed up, right? That's just data. It doesn't show you anything. So for you to understand what is happening with data, you need work performance information, which is translating, making sense of data, explaining what the data is showing. Is in the information how that you explain how the project team is performing, all right? How the product stacks up against quality standards. So for example, you'd say, yes, they did just one wall, but the wall was even poorly painted. There were holes and spots on the wall. That's when you'd say we are actually behind schedule. If you continue at this speed, that's when, so the work performance information interprets data, and the work performance reports are the work performance information compiled into the format of a presentation or a report. And work performance reports typically accompany formal recommendations, decisions, or conclusions of the project. And the last output that you'll usually see are updates of all kinds of documents. So you'll be the updates of the documents, the updates of the project management plan, the updates of all the other documents. So that means something happens, you're executing the project and you realize that, oh, there's some assumptions that we didn't realize. So you go back to the project document of the assumption log, and you update that. Or maybe the planning is going this way. You had an event that you had organized, and then you realize, if you're in our countries like Cameroon, that that day they did not announce that the president was going to pass, and so it was going to delay the event by 3 hours. So you go back into the document of, say, event, the communication plan, and you update the communication plan, or you update the project management plan in there. So those are just some examples to explain to you how some of these outputs that you would see, they will be so recurrent that we will not be speaking about them anymore. What we will be doing is we'll be zooming in on the ones that I've not spoken about in the last 3 slides. You understand? I'm saying this and I'm repeating it so that you don't get lost. All right, so you don't get lost with the process and methodology of how we'll approach the class. And so some essential terms that you need to know. And so we'll cover this and speak about the organization structures before closing the class. So when you see PMBOK, again, this is a foundational class, class number 0, the framework, establishing the basis. So when you see PMBOK is the project management body of knowledge of good practices in project management. So usually abbreviated PMBOK, PMBOK, PMBOK. So project management body of knowledge of good practices of project management. And so the Project Management Institute, PMI, PMBOK, define a project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product or service. And so, as I said earlier, temporary does not mean short duration. Projects have a beginning and an end, and every project is unique, and projects enhance an operation or a business. Whereas an operation it's not a project, it has no start and it has no end date. And so if you're building cars on an assembly line, right, that is an operation. Whereas if you're designing and building a prototype of a special model, say Toyota RAV4 2021, that is a project. But once the RAV4 2021 is on the market and they're producing it for mass market, for mass, consumption, that it becomes an operation. It's not a project anymore. All right. And then you see a lot of terms like that we'll use, like progressive elaboration. It means that you execute and you plan as we go. As a project is unfolding, you execute. Then the process of providing or discovering greater level of detail as a project moves towards completion. Then rolling wave planning is indicating that planning and documentation are iterative and ongoing processes. So that's the term, rolling wave planning. And then project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet the project requirements. All right. So that's what project management is. That's what you're learning now. You're applying knowledge, you're applying skills, you're applying the tools and the techniques you will learn so that the project activities now that you'll be doing will meet the requirements of the project and create deliverables. Now, processes, as I said earlier, each time we speak about process, um, these are input, outputs, tools, and techniques combined to execute a specific purpose on the project. So, I want to develop the project charter. That's a process. I want to create the budget, estimate the budget. Yeah, that's a process. I want to develop the schedule. That's a process. I need to identify my stakeholders. That's a process, right? And so many processes will be performed multiple times. All right. So it's not because you see it on the table there, as Lucilla is watching right now, that, yeah, it's not because you see it there that is stuck at that position. All right. So when you see identify stakeholders at the bottom, you don't just do it in initiating. Of course, you started in initiating, but you can continue identifying stakeholders while you're executing, while you're planning, while you're monitoring and controlling. While you're monitoring and controlling, you may realize that, hey, we didn't realize that the policeman is a stakeholder. Let's add him in there and let's figure out how are we going to engage this policeman. All right. So we are constantly identifying stakeholders, and there are many processes like that that will be repetitive during the execution of the project. And then phases are divisions within the project where extra control is needed to effectively manage the completion of major deliverables. And usually, PMI does not attempt to define a phase because phases depend on each project. So it depends on you and depends on the project in which you are. And then when we speak about deliverables is a part of the product or product itself that is presented to the customer or stakeholders for acceptance. At the end of the day, who received the deliverables? The customer or the key stakeholder or the sponsor of the project. They could be the same, they could be different people. But yeah, I'll explain it in the next slides. So it's always reviewed to determine if the project should continue or not. Then inputs, as we said, are the starting point for the process, the raw material, right? The ginger, lemon, sugar, all that, the raw material to begin the execution. And it could be the output of a previous process, right? So the output that was created here can become the input for the other one. All right, you see that a lot, yes. And then tools and techniques are the actions or methods that are used to transform the raw material, right, into the output. So the action techniques used to transform the ginger, the lemon, the sugar into sweet ginger lemon tea. All right, just to give you again that analogy. And then the output, most processes have multiple outputs, right? So the end result of our efforts, this is the end result of our efforts. So the raw material is now transformed into a polished stone, right? So the output, again, as we said, may be the input in another process, right?
Yeah.
And other essential terms, you have programs. Again, for those who are in international organizations, you see these differences. Uh, Programs are a collection of projects with a common goal, and it's managed by a program manager. And then a portfolio is a collection of projects or programs that are implemented to achieve a specific strategic business goal. So, for example, I like to give an example of I used to work before for a job in an international organization where, I had a portfolio of youth engagement. All right. Within youth engagement, that's a portfolio. There were many programs. For example, young leaders, young entrepreneurs, young, sports people, sports, and within young leaders, there were different projects now. Okay, and the within those projects they could interfaith dialogues, mentorship, school mentorships, different projects now that you manage. So it's essentially, you see that a lot in the international development organizations, how it's broken down from portfolio to programs to projects. And so you can see that in the example here, a project will be painting room 6 on the 6th floor. A program will be painting the entire 6th floor. A portfolio will be painting floor 6, 7, and 8. And the strategic business goal would be painting the entire building, for example. Yeah. And when you hear baseline, baseline is what? Is the original plan plus any approved changes. So usually when we speak about baseline in project management, we're speaking about the baseline of scope, of time, the schedule, and of cost, the budget. So the baseline is what is, you know, where we are starting, what is approved, the original plan. This is where we are. This is the baseline, and that's what we're always measuring now when we're monitoring, controlling. Is we're saying, this is what is happening. This is what we had planned. Here's a variance. And the historical information, the baseline, yeah, the baseline usually for it to be officially the baseline has to be signed off by everyone who has stakes, not who has stakes, who has decision making stakes in the project. To change, you must go through a system of approval to change the baseline. And the historical information is information, from the project that you've done in the past. Lessons learned are lessons learned from previous projects. And then regulations, know the difference between regulations, which is the law, official document that provided guidelines that must be followed, and standards, which are industrial standards. So document approved by recognized body that provides guidelines. Compliance with standard is not mandatory. So the regulations now in many countries is you have to wear a mask when we're in the public zone. Thank God we're in Africa. We don't have COVID-19 crazy issues. We did apply that early on, but now, there's something in our genes. We don't know. There's something. So, but elsewhere, my husband, he goes to Dubai at least once a month, and he was saying, the penalty, this is a regulation. It's not a standard. It's not like best practice. It's not like you can wear your mask if you want. Is if you don't have your mask, you're paying, I think it's something like $3,000. They make the task so high so that it discourages. I think it's something like that, but you correct me if I'm wrong. So the regulations now, is the law. Is not do you adhere with it or not? Whereas standards is best practices, like PMBOK, right, is a standard. The project management by Project Management Institute is a standard. That means you can do your project and not apply any of this. No one will sue you or put you in prison. Um, but if you're not following the regulations and the law, yeah, you can go to prison. So other things to remember is that the customer is always the most important person on the project. So always remember your customer. Well, this is not your customer. This was your input tools and techniques. Always remember who will represent my customer here. Your customer. Put the face of your customer somewhere here. You say, "This is my customer." Always have him in the picture when you're doing your project, and know who is my customer. All right. So that's that for essential terms, and we are almost done. The last part of this section of the class is project roles. So the project manager, you have the three kind of roles essentially. You have the project manager who is empowered to use organizational resources. He's in control of the project, authorized to spend the project's budget, authorized to make decisions in the project, and responsible for the success or failure of the project. Then we have the project coordinator, who's a little weaker than the project manager and may be authorized to make some decisions, but not so much with the budget. And then project expediter is the weakest role and very limited decision ability. All right. Okay. Okay. And other roles, we have senior management, who's anyone senior to the project manager, issues the strategic plans and goals of the company and making sure the project is aligned to those goals, and may be called upon for to resolve conflicts. And then the functional manager is a departmental manager. So it could be manager of engineering, manager, vice president of marketing, director of IT, especially, a lot of structured organizations, they have, functional managers. And a lot of problem comes, sometimes project conflicts come when the functional manager clashes with the project manager because their roles kind of becomes unclear. All right. So we'll talk about that in the next things. And then there's a project office, also referred as a project management office. Not every organization has it. One of our PMP instructor is a project manager at Cantel, and he actually lobbied to have that telecom company create a project management office because they have many projects happening at the same time. And so the project management office provides guidance, to prioritize projects, um, and it may be part of the change control board. It manages the interdependencies between projects because you could be in a company and there's so many projects happening, and each one is doing the thing individually, whereas there could be many interdependencies between projects. And it defines best practices, defines standards, and maintains the lessons learned. So it's a departmental unit within organizations, and it's not a single person. And then the sponsor is like the customer, but not always the customer. You have to make them happy. And I'll explain the difference here. So the sponsor can be internal, the project champion or the one funding the project, and may be used to resolve conflicts in the project. So the sponsor would be, say, for Apple, right? Who's doing a phone? The sponsor would be the directors of Apple, right? Who are sponsoring the new phone. Whereas the the customer could be the sponsor when it's an internal project, but the customer usually will be the users, right? The person using um, the project. But the sponsor also can be seen as the customer, especially if the project would be, given back to them for their use. So it depends on which kind of project in which you're facing. And then the program manager, as we said, is senior to the project manager and may be responsible for several projects executing at the same time and may be used to resolve conflict in the project. Stakeholders is anyone involved in the project. You guys already know all this, so we're just reviewing it, all right, so that we're on the same page definition wise. So this could be individuals, businesses, or communities that have a vested interest in the project's outcome. And so typically, project stakeholders are involved in the project process, and their expectation drives the expectation drive the project requirements. So stakeholders' interests may positively or negatively affect the project. All right. So always identify and communicate with the stakeholders. Not everyone will be happy, but keep them aware of the project's evolution. And so some key stakeholders are the project manager who manages the project, the customer who uses the project deliverable, the performing organization, that means the organization hosting the project, the project team, that's a collection of the individuals completing the project work, the project sponsor who authorizes the project work and budget, and he's a project champion. So those are some key um, um, roles in a project. Now, the project manager in an agile environment, here we'll speak more about the um, because agile projects are very self-organized with self-organizing teams, right? Taking on the former responsibilities of the project manager. So managing a project using an agile approach requires that the project team adopts an agile mindset. So that means agile manner, quick delivery, early feedback for the next step, transparency, high priority, and servant leadership. And so servant leaders empower their teams by leading through service, approaching projects by purpose or project optimization, people, environment for success, creating environment for success, and processes are result based. And the servant leaders manage relationships to build communication and coordination within the team and across the organization. The servant leaders facilitates. All right. The emphasis shifts here from managing coordination to facilitating collaboration. Right. So everyone, you try to create an atmosphere where everyone contributes and collaborates, versus just coordinating pieces. And the servant leader has the ability to change or remove the organizational impediments to support the delivery teams. Finally, the servant leader focuses on paving the way for the team to do its best work. So the servant leader influences projects and encourages the organization to think differently. In addition to servant leadership, team members emphasize their interpersonal and emotional intelligence skills, not just technical skills. And the team needs these skills so they can respond well to changes in project direction and technical product changes. So the servant leader has many responsibilities, like educating the stakeholders around why and how to be agile, because sometimes the stakeholders are like, what is this new thing in managing projects? So you, the servant leader, has to educate the stakeholder. You have to support the team through mentoring, encouragement, and support, right? Uh, Pull up your team, then help the team with technical project management activities like quantitative risk analysis, right? Because some teams in Agile, they don't know all these other technical things that we will do in this class. So if you happen to be in an Agile environment and to be a servant leader within an Agile team, you will help them with a lot of the technical and quantitative things that we'll be learning during this class. And then celebrate team successes and support and bridge building activities with external groups. Last part of this portion of the class is about the organizational structures. There are three kinds of organizational structures in project management. You have functional organizations. So the project management institute doesn't really like functional organizations because they're least empowering to the project manager. So functional organizations would be structures that group staff members according to their area of expertise. So you'll say sales department, marketing department, construction department, and so on. And functional structures require the project team members to report directly to the functional manager, right? So it's the functional manager who owns the resources and loans them for the project. So like what? Let's say you are in a usually governmental organizations are functional. And yes, you might be the project manager on a project, but your team members, you'll be taking them from, you take one person from the marketing department, You go and beg the guy from the director of the IT department and say, hey, please, can I use your IT guy for just a few hours to work on this project? You go, you negotiate, you beg them, you come. And then this person who's good with contracts. You go to procurement, please, hey, can I just use his time for 2 hours to work on this project? So, the project manager ends up being, it's true, you need to negotiate, but you're essentially begging for resources. And at the end of the day is the functional manager, so the procurement manager, the marketing manager, who has the final say and who owns the resources. All right. So you're not really empowered as a project manager when you're in such a company. And you see, the huge contrast is the projectized companies, right? Where you have an organization like, let's say, within the UN, right? It's true that UN is so to some degree functional, but at the same time they also operate in projectized way where they have voici le projet tel, this is the project to help the girls' education in this village, and to that project, they all the resources are mobilized just for that project, right? You see the difference here now, right? So all the resources are mobilized just for that project. And so PMI really likes this because this is where the project manager can really deploy all his know-how and apply all these different things. And so the project manager, the different project managers in such an organization directly report to the president or the senior management in this type. So this is a structure where the project manager has the greatest amount of authority, and the project team is assigned to the project on a full-time basis. And when the project is complete, the project team members move on to other assignments within the organization. So the setback here is that there's no job to go back to, and it could be a little wasteful on resources. But people who are part of the team actually, and people who are part of the team, sometimes when the project is over, they don't know that's it. They have to look for another job. Right? Yeah. And then you have matrices. Matrices are kind of like a fusion of functional and projectized companies, where you have weak matrices, where it's like a functional, balanced matrix, where it's balanced, and then strong matrix, which is like projectized. And so the different structures are reflective of the project manager's authority in relation to the functional manager's authority. So you see a matrix here, you have the president, and you have the different managers of project managers, the program managers, and different projects, and you still have the functional managers, right? Marketing VP, operations VP, finance VP, services VP. And for the exam, when no organization is specified, oh, assume that it's a matrix. All right. The challenge here, the difficulty here is that employees will be accountable to two bosses, and sometimes that creates a lot of conflict. So, and the thing is, they may report more to the boss who will do the annual review. All right. 1 second. Give me 1 minute. All right. So, this is the last three slides essentially of the class. Um, so yeah, this explains the different progression of work or organizational forms, and here's a table that shows you who makes the most project decisions in the functional manager. In a matrix is shared, in the projectized is a project manager. The advantages, and disadvantages of each kind of organizational structure. For here, for example, for some disadvantages in the functional is there's slow communication between departments, slow responses to change, slow decision making. For matrix, the two bosses, many sources of conflict because of the two bosses, more meetings, slow reaction time, and hard to monitor and control. Whereas for projectized, some of the disadvantages is that the duplication of resources, rules not always respected, potential lessons learned can be lost, and discipline specific knowledge can slip. and there's less career continuity for project team members. So, and that's that for functional management. Here are just some core tenets when we speak about agile projects, right? In the team organization of agile. Usually in agile projects, you have 3 to 9 members. Ideally, agile teams are co-located. That means they're in the same space, and the team members are 100% dedicated to the team, to the project. um uh Team finish valuable work faster. Teams waste much less time because they do not multitask and have a reestablished context, because they optimize the flow of project value, of project work. And here again, it speaks about the different roles. I'm kind of speeding through because we're rushing with time. Different roles of agile team members. So you have I-shaped people who have deep specialization in one domain. For example, someone who would be working on the microchips, right? A microchip engineer, he knows that his only thing is, that's his domain, his fix. And then you have T-shaped people who supplement their expertise in one area with supporting but less developed skills in associated areas, and good collaboration skills. All right, so they're fluid. And you also have the product owner, who is in charge of, essentially owning the product that is created and shaping the way the product is being created. And the team facilitator, who's basically that servant leader, making sure that there's a flow in the team work. So yeah, there's a product owner, as you said, uh, responsible for guiding the direction of the product. And then team facilitator, the third role typically seen on agile team is a servant leader. Um, yeah. So this role is sometimes called the project manager or the scrum master or the project team lead or team coach or team facilitator. Essentially, that's what the team facilitator does. And so that's that for the project framework. This is just an overview. 49 processes capture the whole project work. 5 process groups. All right, so see the difference between processes and process groups: initiating, planning, executing, and monitoring and controlling and closing. And 10 knowledge areas: integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality management, resources, communication, risk, procurement, stakeholder management. And this is just the phrase that I came up with to memorize this, because I was trying to memorize this. I saw 6 Cameroonians quietly rationing cocoyam. Rationing is it? Rationing your cocoyam. Reading political stories. They say find funny things to help you memorize. It helps the memory to stick in the memory. So those are some memorization techniques. And yeah, that's that. The next class, which will start in 10 minutes, we'll give a 10-minute break. Is the project management. We'll cover the project management plan, which will have all these different plans in addition to the scope baseline. So that's that. Thank you for your attention. Are there any questions? There will be questions for you, the quizzes for you to answer tonight before the class tomorrow. But are there any questions before we go to the next class of the day, project integration management? We'll take a 15 minutes break, but before taking the 15 minutes break, please feel free to open your mic, and we'll take a 10 minutes break. We'll take 5 minutes for questions and 10 minutes break. So we'll start integration management in 10 minutes. I know at 4 p.m. Sorry, at 4 p.m. So feel free to open your mic to ask a question. Or if you guys have a question here. Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, so when you do your quizzes, make sure that the questions that are really tough, that you want us to review, you jot them down so that we can review them in class before we go to the next topic. All right. Yes. All right. No questions raised. Okay. So see you in 15 minutes for integration management.